Hey everybody, Syntax77 here, and this is part 2 of my solo winter backpacking trip video. Now, if you haven't already seen that part 1 video, it would probably make sense to go back and check it out. Might put things in a little bit better context for you. I mean, hey, I can't stop you if you want to start with this video, but in that video, kind of laid things out as far as what's going on. Now, what should be obvious is we're not actually out on the trail at the trailhead yet. See, for this video series, I'm going to go through the whole process of picking a place, planning a place, doing the actual trip, and all the fun things that come along with it. So last time, part 1, one of the key sticking points of that video was the fact that I asked you guys, in my infinite laziness, to help me pick a location for the actual trip. And I won't get into the details of all that because it's in part 1. But what ended up happening was a huge, at least from my perspective on my little channel, a huge turnout of feedback from you guys. I really appreciate it. It was over 400 responses. So my laziness kind of backfired because I had a lot of reading up to do, but it was a good thing. I got all kinds of great ideas. I mean, you guys were throwing whole paragraphs, multiple paragraph posts at me. It really is appreciated. I tried to respond as much as I could, but of course, a lot of time I was just looking, reading, Googling, seeing what I could do. Now, in that comment section at the top, I did pin a post where I said, hey, just thumb up areas that may have already been posted by other people, respond, and I'll just try to use that to gauge where I should go. I really wanted to put a lot of the fate of this trip in the hands of you, the viewers. And I did kind of say before that I was leaning towards a less aggressive winter, 6 feet of snow trip. And that's because at this point I have confirmed Mike and I will be doing a trip that's more like that. Details on that trip we'll save for another video. And in fact, as it turns out, before I was saying I'm going to go on this solo trip first to test out some new gear and then the more aggressive trip with Mike. Well, timing wise, things may have gotten a little askew compared to how I thought they would be. I had a really cool and unique opportunity very last minute to go to Ireland. I did that and then I came back and I wanted to get out that Texas video, which a lot of you seem to be liking. Thank you. So got that posted and now here I am, and all of a sudden it looks like I'm going to be doing the more aggressive trip with Mike first, and this solo trip that you and I are planning is going to be afterwards. But that's okay. Enough of that. Let's talk about what you guys suggested and what I ultimately picked. In fact, let me take a look at some of these comments here, maybe spur some good conversation, because I know viewers out there, you're all over the country and even all over the world. It's pretty cool. And whatever I pick is not necessarily going to be your neck of the woods, but hopefully it'll still be interesting to you. And as I go through these comments, you'll see we got a wide variety of feedback here. In fact, I did say before I wanted to stay somewhat close to home, and I do appreciate the feedback out there. I got some stuff for like Grand Canyon and some stuff out west, and I just kind of mentally tucked those away for later, but not this trip. So I did filter those out, unfortunately, just because of logistics and timing in my own personal life right now. Let's see, Adirondacks, 15 thumbs up on another Adirondacks post. That's pretty strong. I did, however, end up not choosing the Adirondacks because it was going to be a little too similar to the snowshoe trip that Mike and I are going to be doing soon. Another New York one, Devil's Path. Catskills, Jay Creature said this in New York. Don't be scared, it's fun. I'll even shuttle you back to the car. Thanks, Jay. So what if it's the hardest hike in the country with dangerous chupacabra? You can handle it. That one I've read of before. It's got a pretty decent reputation for being aggressive. I like that. Maybe I'll save it for the summer. Some good PA feedback. People were saying, hey, you're from PA. Why don't you do more trips in PA? Well, loophole. I'm actually from the land of tax-free shopping, but I do love Pennsylvania. We'll get there. Most likely the Black Forest Trail. That's actually a trip that Mike and I were almost going to do, so I'll save that for him. Smoky Mountains coming through, thank you. You can record some great footage on the fires. Yeah, that might bum me out actually, but good point, good point. Somebody else right underneath that, Smoky Mountains, Cherokee National Forest, good stuff. I've looked at that before. Ohio, represent. Massachusetts, Canada, the Cohost Trail, I hope I pronounced that right. Somebody recommended in here that's on the border up in New Hampshire and Canada. I've looked at that one before too. I think it'd be really cool to do. But, oh, Scotland. I was close. I was across the water from you guys just a week and a half ago, but probably can't afford to go back right now. A ton of feedback for North Carolina in general. There are a couple threads on here with tons of thumbs up just for North Carolina in general. Not one specific place stood out as getting a bunch of particular votes, but North Carolina really represented. It was close, you guys. But what it ended up coming down to was West Virginia versus Virginia in terms of actual votes for some specific regions. Speaking of West Virginia, last time I made a pretty big error. I left the word West out of the very important phrase West Virginia when talking about dolly sods. Yes, I know, and I love dolly sods, and it is definitely in West Virginia. My apologies to you out there. But ironically, and maybe it's because I stirred the pot or something, it came down to a location in Virginia and a location in West Virginia that got a ton of votes as specific locations. And that was Grayson Highlands in Virginia, actually kind of tucked in this tri-corner area of Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia. Grayson Highlands was getting a ton of votes, ton of love. And then the other one was the Seneca Creek backcountry in, yes, West Virginia. About, I'd say maybe 4.5 hours from me versus Grayson, which was closer to 7 hours. But both of those are doable. So I went through, I searched all the posts by keyword, and then I looked at thumbs up and whatnot. And ultimately the winner was Grayson Highlands in Virginia. So I will be going down there for this trip. Don't know exactly when yet. We still got some packing to do, which we will document on this video series as well. And also, I need a specific loop down there. Now, Grayson Highlands is a state park, and that's where they have these wild ponies that I think the area is pretty famous for. The AT, Appalachian Trail, goes through there. Anybody who studied the Appalachian Trail probably knows about this area in terms of its pony population, wild ponies. And they are wild ponies, but they were also introduced by man. But I think this will make for some good photography options and videography, of course, for the video. And it seems to me, from doing a little cursory data, that back in 1965, they actually designated this area a park, and it's a bald, which kind of looks like above treeline areas up in alpine zones, but is not an alpine zone at all. It's way too warm for that, but for whatever reason, these areas pop up. They're in the Smokies as well, called balds, and there's just a lack of trees and high vegetation. It's mostly thick grass and dense, low underbrush kind of vegetation that looks very similar to alpine zones. It's kind of debated as to why this occurs. It almost seems kind of like an enigma. But anyway, you got these open areas with low vegetation, makes for great views, nice and scenic, and it's also good for livestock. I know in the Smokies, a lot of those balds they used for grazing cattle. This particular area, Grayson Highlands, apparently became a park in 1965, a state park. Prior to that, there was a lot of grazing, mostly by cattle. After it became a park, there was no more cattle grazing, and by around, I want to say, the early 70s, somebody decided, hey, let's introduce ponies back into the ecosystem here and get that grazing activity back. So it was man introduced, but they're kind of left to do their own things. The Park Service does kind of look out for them, if you will. I know that they give them checkups in the fall, and they make sure that there are like deworming things out for them and maybe some salt licks or something. But either way, it's the closest I'm ever going to come to walking with wild ponies. You just kind of hope that you see them, bump into them randomly on the trail. It sounds pretty cool. On top of that, it's the Mount Rogers National Recreation Area that is basically adjacent to this park, and that has, as you may have guessed, Mount Rogers, which is the tallest peak in Virginia. So I can check that out. I can make some sort of loop. Again, I got to figure out the actual loop. Now, I know this won't be all of you, but those of you out there that suggested this area, or maybe you were quiet before, but you know about it, any particular loops you could recommend that I can get some good views, peaks, vistas, camp areas for a hammock, and also hopefully a high probability of running into some ponies? That would be cool. If you got any feedback out there, I'm going to start hitting the Google and finding some stuff myself. And then once I get further with that research, I'll post part 3 most likely, and we'll see what I have so far. Got to find some maps too. Somebody just asked the other day too, like, where do you get your maps and stuff? I have videos on that. Check those out, my trip planning videos. It's from a while ago, but it's basically how I still do things. And, well, you can watch that video, but ultimately I'd say do a Google image search first and foremost. You never know what pops up for free, but you can check that other video out if you want the details. Anyway, that's what I'm going to be working on right now, is trip planning for the Grayson Highlands. Thanks again to everybody out there who gave me some feedback. So stay tuned for part 3. Till next time, I'm Syntax77. You have fun out there.